Hello and welcome to Vendor Risk Manager. My name is Gregory Thomas Ron, and I'm the Managed Risk Services. Today we'll be showcasing the VRM product and what it has to offer for you. What is Vendor Risk Manager, and how do we actually do it? Is to have an internal framework for security. There are actually three pillars, which are coverage, frequency, and auditability. Coverage on your full vendor portfolio. What VRM brings to the table is a repeatable, quantified and scoring model that's going to remove subjectivity. So we're making consistency when we're grading critical vendors to your least critical vendors. We want to identify where enhanced due diligence is needed and exactly that GLBA line is driven. We have which regular assessments and on-site if applicable, and then continuous monitoring on empirical data sources. We'll be making sure that we're not just checking a vendor on a yearly basis. We will be doing that on a monthly basis, bringing in those different data sources and checking for those watch list hits, any of financial data that may be available, data if that vendor processes for credit cards, then also CFPB and OCC. Are there any fines out there in consumer complaints? Then the accountability. We can be having notifications and issue management. So as do our vendor assessments, to have a centralized location when issues actually do arise, that full workflow and transparency so that we know we have different levels of approvers work through those issues. It makes up an anatomy of that complete vendor risk program. The first part is going to be your inherent risk. What is that risk to your institution by merely doing business with that vendor? We have financial help. Ensure that that company is going to be here today, tomorrow, and next year for you. The industry compliance. Making sure that specific to those industries, that we those certifications, industry standards. Effectiveness. We need to understand the vendor business's practices and what internal controls they have in place. Now, this is really specific to that cybersecurity. Ensure that confidential data stays confidential and that company is doing vulnerability testing and making sure there are no weaknesses in their system. Regulatory compliance, specifically with those vendors who deal a lot with directly with those customers. Are there complaints that are being filed against that institution, and are they actually being remediated? That watch list, one of the most important, be making sure those vendors aren't doing business with bad guys out there, monitoring for geopolitical risk. When risk management and what we're actually doing today, you may have an adequate process in place, but there are four critical questions that you need to be asking yourself. One is going to be to identify the risk that every vendor poses your institution. Two is going to be, have you identified the type of data that these vendors have access to? That question alone is going to start to help you your vendor portfolio and risk assess how critical those vendors are to your institution. Three, deal the appropriate due diligence level to perform on each vendor relationship. Those tiers, knowing if that is a critical or least critical vendor, you will start to realize and have that full transparency on what diligence to proceed with. And then lastly, do you have an audit trail and a due diligence and subsequent action items? Logging those issues can into your system and show from an auditor's perspective what you are actually doing today. This is what Vendor Risk Manager has brings to the table. And at that point, I'd like to turn this over to James Roberts, who's going to be able to shed a little light on the background of VRM and really how this came to be. James, yours.
Greg, and for handing it over here, and it's a way of introduction. My name is James Roberts, and I'm our enterprise program manager here at FIS for our risk programs. I'm only in our second line of defense at FIS. That's really our corporate functions and working within corporate risk, in that line of defense. My at the company is to manage a couple of practices with risk, including internal risk assessments, issue management, business risk officers, and then to my heart is always going to be third-party vendor risk management. We've programmed for a number of years within risk with partners in supply chain, procurement, accounts payable. And back in 2014, we really took a big look at our entire risk universe and realized third-party risk was becoming more relevant. It was a dynamic avenue of risk. It was an area that we needed to spend time, capital, and resources. Saw that need for not only quantitative risk scoring, for not only links to empirical and external data sources, as well as integration with other risk programs. We looked on the environment and looked for different solutions that were available to meet our internal corporate needs. Some of those were frankly cost prohibitive. We spent a lot of time on customization and determining what would be our best avenue forward. Determination that building an internal solution with FIS development support to meet our risk needs was the best path forward. 2014, we spent about 6 months building this solution from the ground up, the architecture, the infrastructure, and even the modules and interface to meet the need for that quantitative risk scoring, the integrated data elements, and that link to external programs like issue management or risk assessment. We spent a lot of time in 2014 and then into 2015 as well, perfecting this model, and be reviewed by our internal audit teams, sending it to our examiners in the FBA or FIS, work through the programs of a new risk model, moving everything from Excels and SharePoints and Access databases into an actual profile system. Spent time, like I said, in 14 and 15 doing that work, and then realized the need to, if FIS is building time in this, we're spending our efforts, and we're realizing that this is a gain, and it's a benefit to FIS internal corporate risk. What do our clients need to have filled as well? Can this be used to help them solve that issue of vendor risk, to cut the administration necessary, to some of the administration side, and focus truly on the risk factors of the supply chain? So we have a team, and Greg and your coworkers have helped us actually commercialize that solution and offer it for the clients that need it. Out some of that admin middleman work and really focus on those true risk factors. So something that I think you're getting ready here to show and run everyone through is the solution we use internally. Yours sometimes looks a little prettier, has a funny little GUI on it, but the bones are the same. The data that we use to look up is the same. The workflow, integration to issue management are the things we built internally, got reviewed, got assessed, got audited, and thought we're ready for the general marketplace consumption. Handily say that we continue to use this tool. We're comfortable with it. It continues to meet internal corporate risks needs. And I'll hand it back to you, Greg, to kind of walk through how you guys accomplish that goal for the clients, and as well as kind of give them that back-end view of how to do it internal at FIS.
Excellent. Thank you, James. Right here is going to be your dashboard. Anytime you log into this system, you'll be brought directly to this main page. It's a very intuitive dashboard, and it just is directly inside is going to be your tiers. So here you can see your tiers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 vendors. With those tiers 1, 2, and 3 are going to be your most critical vendors, and that tiers 4 and that tier 5 is going to be those least critical vendors. You always think about that GLBA line is going to be driven between that tier 3 and that tier 4. So any vendor that is in that tier 1, 2, and 3, part of this service is that we'll be sending out annual control surveys to those tiers with all full evidence review and issue management around that. Dashboard, you have quick and easy access to all of the open issues. You see issues that are currently in that open state, and then how many issues actually have been resolved within the last month. Action items, where you simply add a vendor with a new intake form, a new relationship, go to your reporting, and then a simple help button. And there's actual managed service behind this. So with that help button, you can route to an actual person. Let's dive into a vendor portfolio. As you do any one of these tiers, it's going to drop you into this layout. And within this layout, you're going to be able to dive into that full vendor portfolio. Now, any that you see within our platform is going to be exportable to Excel, which makes it very intuitive for those people who like to really just deal in that Excel and conduct reconciliation that way. When we do our own dedicated vendor ID, this is you to that profile on that one vendor. And here, you're going to have that full legal name of that vendor with that ID. In details, we're going to know exactly what that vendor name is, that ability to edit that name. We have a description of what that service is that they are providing. When their analyst is assigned to that vendor, you will see our analyst name here, which will give direct access to contact them with any questions, and master ID. And then with our full vendor review, when that review is conducted, you will see the status within this tab as well. We have information. This will be that contact information on that business owner. And then right below that is going to be who the vendor contact is. That email, name, phone number. Now, there are multiple relationships. Every relationship is going to have its own intake form, and their information will be listed out within this tab. And then we're here for that background information is going to be that physical address. So right is going to be really your most important aspect of this tool. There is going to be scored on its quantitative score. So just a tier bucket, but an actual score that's derived directly from these tiles to your right. It's going to be that intake form, and then our external data lookups that we have API solutions linking in the PCI data checks. The list that incorporates 300 watch lists, including the OFAC, that are run every month. You're going to see for all of those regulatory complaints. Then we have the CFPB with all those regulatory complaints, fines, levies with the OCC as well, and financials. Bring in those financials on all of your public entities and see if what exactly their financial health is. In an instance that that is a private company, during our control survey phase, we'll be reaching out for that documentation to that full final review on them. And the last pile here, any issues that actually are derived from that control survey will be conducted here. And as those survey issues are remediated, those will come off that vendor score. Our checklist. This is really that compliance checklist to ensure that not just our analysts are doing everything that they need to, but also that you have that full ability and transparency to see exactly what has been done. So when it's uploaded into our system with 48-hour time period, our analysts are going in and do those external data lookups. As completed, you can do this checklist and see exactly when they were completed, and then commentary that may be around those due diligence searches. As that control survey comes in, and our analyst reviews that, along with the evidence documentation, these checklist items will start to move from either incomplete to in progress to complete. The workflows that are associated with the checklist tab, the first being the inherent risk survey reviewed. This would be that intake form. We can run workflow so that the owner at any time of the year to reaffirm that no contact information or that relationship has changed at all. And then final workflow is that profile sent for approval. Here we have the ability to set this for a specific business owner, someone else in your organization, to actually sign off on all of that due diligence, that evidence, the survey, and then any issues along with that vendor, to really putting that timestamp on when this vendor profile was completed. When we have multiple relationships within that one vendor profile, they're scored on all of their own inherent risk by that intake form. Now, inherent risk, that intake form is going to have its own risk score, its own tier in products and services. The highest risk tier and highest risk score is always going to be reflected in the vendor portfolio. It's never going to be a blended score. This is very intuitive. For you to add a relationship, anytime you have a plus sign here, it means adding a vendor, adding a relationship, or maybe adding a document. You have the ability to either complete this by yourself, or you could actually, if you are a local admin, you can send this to a business owner within the organization to have them fill this relationship out as they would. You can edit this intake form or actually see why this intake score is being generated, why it is. Click into our intake. Now, 4 main parts with that intake form that are really configurable to this tool. And it's this really robust and customized by the client. The first is going to be that background information. Second is going to be information security. So what type of access does that vendor have to your institution? And then what type of network access is there? And then also, do they process PCI data? Physical site access, reputational impact. If a company is subject to laws and regulations, and then we have vendor criticality. How critical are those services to your institution? If it were to go down tomorrow, what is that impact to the services that you are providing to your customers? One of these sections is all 100% configurable. So from an implementation process, we want to see what type of vendor risk management program that you have today, what type of intake form that you use. In an instance that you are perfectly satisfied with the intake form that you use today, we incorporate that into this tool, wrap a scoring model around it, and use it that way. Otherwise, we have a recommended standard form, or we can do a combination of a combined intake form as well. In here, and you make an edit to these intakes, you have to submit. You need to provide a change reason and commentary around that. It's going to drive really that audit trail and perspective. With activity tab, activity that has come out within this portfolio, so that if it changed a risk tier, has the intake form updated, you're going to see that last person that was in this portfolio and why change was conducted. Tab. As full survey is sent out to those tiers 1, 2, and 3 vendors, we're going to be collecting that evidence in that documentation, so our analysts can do that full review. Now, as that evidence does come in, if there's a one piece of evidence that maybe you have today and you want to upload into this tool, it's simply going to be clicking on that plus sign, and then here, adding a file, selecting what type of relationship. This gives you the ability to link specific FIS-16s to specific products and services, and then what type of documentation you may have. Here, as that evidence is uploaded, our analysts are notified, and then they will come in here, add their commentary, and do a full review on the document. an expiration date. We will end that expiration date, and then once that evidence does expire, we will go out directly to that vendor and collect that updated documentation. Next survey tab. This is really that second part of the VRM tool that is purely configurable. So like that intake form, we're going to be taking a look at what type of control survey that you may use today, and then we're going to compare that to our standard intake form as well. We customize this control survey to your liking, and then as you do put that into the tool, we will send this control survey out to your vendor through a dedicated email that has a link directly to that survey that we're able to complete the survey, and then when that survey has been completed and submitted, it comes directly into the tool. You'll be reading what survey is, all the different answers that they may have, and our system in the back end has different notifications on there and dependencies, so that if you answer a certain question in the negative light, we will know that that's a red flag. When our analysts actually come in here and do that review, they'll know if that is either a false positive or is actually a true issue. And once the issues are launched within the Issues tab, you're going to start to see all the different issues that have come to light through either that control survey or maybe there's an ad hoc issue as well. Dive into those issues by clicking on that eyeball, and here you're going to see that full description on what that issue may be, and there will be a requested or a action plan that our analyst is recommending that you may take. You have full transparency to request a report progress, set an action, close issue, or risk accept. During our implementation, we will set 2 different issue approvers as a different hierarchy of how those issues will be remediated. Moving on. With that, as issues are brought up with the tool through those vendors and the surveys, and those workflows that are running will be here within this workflow tab. Anytime you see a caret, you'll be able to expand that workflow and see exactly who that workflow is running on. Onto those external data. Now, any of those PCIs, the watch lists, financials, anytime that there is a finding, within each one of these tabs, you'll be able to dive in and see exactly what that finding may be. Here in front of you, you can see the PCI check. That we're going to know that what is that status of PCI, either being green, yellow, or red. Are they in compliance? Are they not in compliance? And how long have they not been in that compliance? Now, wrap, again, our scoring model around that so that we have that full ability to configure on your risk appetite any points you want associated with all of your external due diligence. Within these circles, these are going to be exactly how many points being associated with those hits or findings that we may come across. Moving to the Documents panel. With Documents panel, this gives you a really nice, robust way to house any type of contracts and notices and actually be able to link parent and child records together. As you can see here, we have a parent file, and we know exactly what the status is, the product and service. We can set an expiration and notification date around these. As we do begin to set all this down here, for what assigned owner is for specific documentation, they'll be getting a notification of that expiry date, and we can set a notification date that's typically going to be a few weeks to a month before that expiry date, so that they know there's action items on their part. One thing really nice about the Documents panel and Evidence panel is that we have versioning. If you do have an updated contract or an updated notice, you're going to be able to add a file within the record, and it's going to start to log all of those different records you may have. And then at any point in time, you can come in here to this actual record and then pull up that previous document. That document will always be displayed on your front screen here. Now, records. In the end, you want to start to link documents and records together, you would simply press that add icon here, and this is going to bring up that same screen as you would to upload a regular document. When it's uploaded, you'll be able to see those solid records that are linked directly to your parent file. Now, our performance tab. This is a part of our real configurable process where if you want to start to track some simple SLAs, with delivery, cost, responsiveness, innovation. We can set simple parameters on how you actually rate that vendor, and then we can record those within this panel. Lastly, to our notes section, where what is the latest note? It's going to act just like a blog, so that any of those comments that are the most recent are just going to filter on top. It's nice so that if you have multiple people within your organization that are with this one vendor, they can set notes to them and then link those. Moving to the dashboard, based on a little more of that configurability of the tool. Within the settings panel, during our implementation, we're going to come in here and set all of your parameters for your external due diligence. So specifically for CFPB, what rate for a low, medium, high hit? We have the ability to add any type of points surrounding that. And this is going to be specific to your appetite. It's going to be for all of those due diligences, the OCC, the PCI, and then your watch list. Our reporting. The tool, we have a series of dedicated data exporting. Now, these exports are going to be able to really give you that kind of the nuts and bolts in that rich in the tool. So you're going to be able to see exactly all of that control survey data. You can export all of those documents that you may have to be in one view of when those are expiring. You can be able to see your inactive vendors, what due diligence has been done, and what findings have been done in all of your vendor portfolio. And one of those robust reports that we do have is going to be that all populated intake form data. This is going to be able to put all of the questions and answers that came from that intake form. We're going to put this in that export so you can see exactly how every single intake form was answered and scored. From our sidebar, these are going to give you some really quick links to dive into if you want to search your vendor intakes. So in the case that you may have started an intake form and instead of you just going to submit it, you wanted to save it, come back to it later. Within your intakes, you'll be able to search for any type of vendor that you may have seen and what you're looking for. And then from this panel, you can go there, you can submit that intake form, or you can simply remove that. We have our P function. So for proposal, in an instance that you may be looking to do business with a new vendor, and you may have 3 or 4 different candidates, this will give you the option to do RFP. You would simply come in here, create a new intake form. It's going to be general to those products and services that vendor is providing, a description of what that would be, and then you create this RFP. Once you've created that, you're going to be able to go through motion of adding on 3 or 4 different vendors, running through all of that due diligence, getting them control surveys, collecting that evidence, doing the whole review, and then when you have chosen a winner, then you're going to be adding that to your full vendor portfolio. within each vendor profile, you're going to see an activity list there. But in the case that you want to see that full activity on the whole platform, you'll be able to come into this activity panel and see exactly what has been done the life of the portfolio. Search issues. As control survey phase is ongoing, and that we have issues that do arise from that survey. If you want to here and search specifically for or maybe specifically to risk accepted or closed issues, you have all of these different fields that you're able to search on that criteria. And piggybacking off of those issues, from that issues here, you go ahead and dive in. This is see a full transparency of all the different issues that you may have. And really nice about this grid layout is that have this field chooser. When you bring field chooser up, this is where you can start to customize this whole grid. Now, since you want to see exactly what type of references that are maybe, you can simply come in here, drag and drop that, and then customize this user so that you can see exactly what you want. If you want to remove certain columns, you simply click and then drag and then remove that. You can export this to Excel. That's nice and easy to do some reconciling. Specifically, if you don't want to consistently do the tool, you can export the reconciliation on your time, and once that's complete, you can come back and do your actual changes. Issues are generated, workflows are kicked off. When the task that is assigned to you, you will see a little one icon within this task. When you click into My Tasks, everything is assigned to you in that your action will be within this task. And also send an email notification with a dedicated link that will let you dive right into that issue. Now, seconds. How do you manage all the members within your organization? Well, we have two different roles. We have the local administrator, and then we have the local user. A local user is simply more like that business owner who's going to be able to take forms, add relationships, upload documents, and have a lot of view access. They are limited on is that when they actually add that intake form or add that relationship, it's going to have to go through the VMO. So it's going to have to go through a level of approval before it can actually be put in that system. So administrator, they can submit those intake forms, submit those relationships, and upload those directly to the platform. They essentially have that full access to the site and be able to manage this team management page in front of you. Local users do not have access to this team management page. That local admin can simply grant access to different users, simply coming in here, adding a member, putting a name, and then setting what type of level of access that they want. During implementation, we will make that we whitelist certain domains so that you can simply come in here and add anyone to the system. The dashboard, those real quick links are going to be that vendor. This is going to build up that intake form. You come in and once you actually upload all that information and you submit, that file is instantly generated so that you can start to continue on the work that you may have. And lastly is our full vendor tile. It would be your absolute full vendor portfolio. Now, when you have vendors that are active, and vendors that are inactive, either to that full vendor, find vendors that may be active or inactive, dive into each one of these. You can work and filter on each one of these criteria, and then what information that you may be looking for. And then that is really going to wrap up what the capability of the VRM is. And the big takeaway here is that it's the configurability. So that have that full configurability to configure that intake form to however you would like to make that. And then we'll configure your own risk appetite and scoring around that. And then this is going to be with that control survey. So we will look to see what type of information that you may have today, make recommended action, and then we'll can do a blend of those control surveys. And then the full scoring and these tier buckets are purely, and the scoring is purely on you to see where vendors want to fall. And we work with you so that you are 100% satisfied on where those vendors should be. I want for joining me today, and hopefully give you some real insight from the VRM